if we just pay attention to what's around us, like it is abundant. Like just there's no way to tell yourself a different story. There is abundance all around us. And so as I get, if I get fearful in a place of choosing abundance, I actually just kind of go right back to where I feel at home, which is outside. And I notice that everywhere around me outside, when I'm running or biking or hiking or skiing with my kids, like I just notice abundance exists independent of any humans. Like abundance is just, it is surrounding us.
Hey there, welcome to the Global Fringe, hosted by April Diaz. If you want to experience more of our complex, diverse world, lean into these stories. If you've ever found yourself on the fringe of culture, this is for you. Our hope is that in the next few minutes, you feel seen, emboldened, and compelled to more. Welcome in.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Global Fringe. We are pretty close to wrapping up the second season, and it has been a dream to have my friends this season talk about dreaming big and doing the work in order to get there. And so if you've been listening all season long, you know that we've focused every episode around this idea of dreaming big and doing the work. But it starts with first defining where you are right now. Where's your red dot moment? Where is here? What's your reality right now? And so that you can begin to design your preferred future. You can start to imagine and be curious and let your mind just expand with what it is that you're supposed to be about in this world. When I talk about this stuff with my coaching clients, we talk about like, what is it that you want in your future? And as you can name and define and articulate what is it that you want, you can start creating a plan that helps move you from here to there. And so that was kind of the first two big chunks of this season. And this last segment, this last third, we have been talking with really beautiful global fringe leaders around how you actually do the work. Once you've defined it, once you've designed it, how do you actually do the work to get to where it is that you want to go? And the guest that we have on today is my friend Tara Russell. And Tara, we have been talking about you coming on this podcast for over a year. And again, it's like the exact right timing for every single person. And this is the right time for you. So thank you for being on today. I'm so excited to have you here.
I feel a little giddy. It's totally an honor, and it's always fun and exciting to be with you, April. And in some ways, I think since the first moment we ever met, there was kind of a kindred spirit nature, but also parallel journeys that we were living. So thanks for having me.
Yep. Yeah, I love the work that you've been doing internally that's made a pretty significant difference externally in your life. And I want to tell my listeners just a little bit about you. I think we've been friends for, going on 15 years.
It's been a while.
Right? It's been a while.
So
it's been a hot second. All of our babies were little or not born when we first met. And you're just a powerhouse woman. Like I texted you yesterday and I was like, I don't know how we're friends. So here's just a little bit of your rap sheet for the listeners here. You have worked at Nike, at General Motors, at Intel. You have an Ivy League undergrad and master's degree. Is that correct?
I did not get my master's. I took some class at Yale, but I had my daughter while we were there when I was married.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You lived in Thailand. You've lived internationally. You founded this amazing organization called Create Common Good in Boise, Idaho, where you live. And now you're the Chief Impact Officer for the family of brands with Carnival, which means absolutely nothing to me other than it's a pretty big deal. So tell people just for a second, like what it is that you're actually doing in your day job right now and what your work looks like at this moment in time.
It's kind of funny to hear you say all that because, at the end of the day, I'm just mom. I'm like, hey, mom, my kids run around and need the same things from me that everybody else needs. And half the days of my life, I wonder, did I brush my teeth this morning or not? I do feel really grateful and fortunate to work for Carnival Corporation and PLC. And essentially we're a family of brands, like a lot of big holdings companies, but we have 9 global cruise line brands like Seabourn, Helen America, Princess Cruises, Carnival. And then we created a company for Carnival called Fathom, which is a social impact travel brand. Then we've got a couple British brands, Cunard and P&O Cruises. We have a couple European brands, AIDA and Costa. And we have an Australian brand called P&O Australia. And we're building kind of new developments all the time. So we're working on things in China. We own islands. We own trains. Essentially, we're a very large we're the world's largest travel and leisure company. And we started a television network. We started a gaming platform. And so what's so cool about my work is I have the opportunity to support and serve essentially, ensuring that we drive growth and manage risk through the lens of business practices that are going to make the world a better place. So we're doing a ton of shared value, community, business developments. We're doing a lot in the space of waste innovations. We're working on, driving cleaner fuel and kind of cleaner energy solutions. Our business literally touches the whole wide world. We have 120,000 employees. We go to 1,000 locations-ish, 700 to 1,000, depending on who you ask. We have employees, about 80,000 shipboard employees and about 40,000 on shore from about 80 to 100 countries. So as a person, personally, who loves the whole wide world, I love that I get to support and serve a creative kind of new imagination in and through our businesses all over the world. And so I am, I'm a passionate sort of serial social entrepreneur. I've been fortunate to be part of starting probably now 5 or 6 or 7 different organizations and companies, for-profit, nonprofit. I'm very kind of structure agnostic. I think you really have to think about what's the sort of end vision and mission you're serving, and then, identify the structure that best supports accessing capital really for that mission or vision to become real. So, I do a lot of stuff. Essentially, I just like to help people. Really, it's that simple. I like to put love in action through really creative new business models. And, I think when you and I met, I was just starting Create Come and Go. It was about 11 and a half years ago. And, as I often have done, I sign up for stuff I have no idea how to do. And when I say sign up, I mean, nobody asked me, but I recognize a need, and then I just can't help but do it. And it's usually both the best and the worst thing that ever happened in my life.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, it's shaking my head, jaws dropping. Like, we're friends, and yet I have no idea what you do because you speak a language that I don't understand, and you're so freaking smart. And you work in all of these venues. You text me things of like where you're going and who you're speaking to and what meetings you're in. And I am like, yeah, I didn't brush my teeth today. Exactly. Like, I don't know why we're friends, but I wanted you to say that part of it because in some ways it doesn't matter at all what you do, which is what we're going to talk about here. And on the other hand, because of the work that you do, you are able to do the work that you do. So that's where I want to go and start to tease into a little bit more. You have had quite a life. Your work is certainly beyond impressive. Like, we've established that, so we can let that part go. But your inner work has really led to your best outer work. And I'm wondering if you can start to let listeners in on some of the journey that you've really intentionally and yet also accidentally stumbled into when the unraveling started in your life 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, I would say it's an ongoing process, both the unraveling and then I would say like the reweaving, the tapestry or whatever you want to call it. I mean, what's been so cool is I'm 41 or 2 years old. My kids always think I should know that answer. And I just think, well, you kind of lose track.
You're 41,
after a while.
You're 1 year older than I am.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So I'm 41, confirmed by April, which means it's true. And what's interesting
Our
is
birthdays
about
are 1 day
5
apart.
years ago, I know. I love always celebrating you because like it's more fun to celebrate you than to like think about another year. But honestly, I love every year more. Like every single year of my life, I have more fun. I feel more joyful. I feel like I'm fortunate to be living in better alignment with myself and my nature. And I think for me, it's taken a pretty serious excavation of a whole bunch of junk. And that really began probably 5, 6 to 8 years ago. I started to have these glimpses of an abuse pattern, a sexual abuse pattern that happened in my childhood. And what's interesting is it was like kind of classic textbook. I just repressed it and kind of was not living in awareness of it, but thought, hey, maybe something happened. But it was so scary and so not real until my daughter was about the age that I was when the abuse happened. And then whether I wanted it or not, the memories and the kind of just the reality of it just suffocated me in some ways. And I got to a place where I realized I have to make a choice. I have to dig into this and choose to excavate and begin healing through a new narrative for myself, or I have to like live with this burden and beast that's suffocating me, not in a way that I know how to exist anymore. And so it kind of felt like life or death. And yet I was just terrified. I was so scared of the idea of jumping in because I didn't know what was on the other side jumping in. And what's kind of entertaining to me now is as soon as I took one little tiny, like itty bitty baby step and just like was brave enough to say, I'll try. I have no idea what's coming, but I'll try. As soon as I did, it was like 5 billion pounds of burden came off my shoulders. And I was just like, like I'm just a human and I've been through painful stuff. And guess what? Every human has been through painful stuff. And my junk, while it is unique and specific to me, the truth is it is not unique to have walked through hard stuff and to have to dig out the unhealth and to kind of rebuild a new narrative. And so what I began to realize and recognize was that too many parts of my life were being bossed around by lies from my past. So I was tired. I was exhausted, really obeying the lies. And I was so desperate to be free. And in some ways, like the universe and God and the mystery and magic that's, beyond me kept inviting me into freedom. And I was so afraid. I didn't know what that meant. I still am. I'm discovering it. I mean, now I'm tasting it and loving it. And so discovering it at a different point, but it's been a very grueling and active 5 to 8 years of digging into the places of the past and being willing to face it. And also just to be grateful that, my pain led me to my purpose. Like I have a level of burden for the marginalized and for those without voice that just is unnatural. And that would not exist were it not for the things that have happened to me in my past, I think. So it hasn't been all bad,
No, I think that that's part of the dichotomy or the tension of transformation is that growth always means that there's death. But it's death to the stuff that no longer serves you. It's death to the lies that you have been beholden to. It's death to all the stuff that's not working for you anymore. So when you talk about all of these lies that you had been believing, you carry them and you shoulder them, we all do. And the work that we get to do is unraveling those lies and identifying what's the counter truth to those false beliefs. So I'm wondering, like, can you just even name for us a couple of those false beliefs and how you are making intentional effort to think new, to live into the new life and not just the death of those lies?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna like start laughing because I'm very literal. Like I'm very simplistic, and I am kind of anal and really like organization. So I live by Post-its. It's pretty high tech. And my daughter walks in my bathroom a couple weeks ago and was like, "Mom, why do you have Post-its on your bathroom mirror that say those things?" And I'm like,
you're totally like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind.
I'm
like just your brain is so all over the place. Like
totally.
that.
I'm like Stuart, you know, is it Stuart Smalley from Saturday Night Live? He's like, I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And by golly, people like me. I told her, I said, baby, you know, we all got to live like Stuart. I mean, like it's not all bad to practice. Like I'm so intentional this last like 2 to 3 years about my practice. And when I say practice, I mean like I'm practicing building new muscles on so many levels that I'm tired, but I'm also really grateful. So I have sticky notes on my bathroom window. I have things above where I go to bed. I have things in my kitchen. I have things by where I work. I have messages all over my house that are very like inspiring and rallying. But the truth is, like, it's so funny. I put them up and I have them surrounding me. And in some ways I want them to inspire my children and to inspire like any of my friends and community that show up. But what's funny is I know, you know, God's grace is there for me. Like, and in my bathroom and in my bedroom, in my quiet, intimate, only me space, you know, I have to just remind myself like, hey, you're beautiful. You're a child of God. Like, the message I got really good at telling myself is you're not beautiful. You're, you know, pretty, not enough. And so just learning this idea of being like, it's funny. I have this poem. I have poems all over my house right now. I'm really into like modern day poetry. And, I have all this language that's just like, it's kind of like the universe whispering like lovely and loving kindness to me through song, through poem, through paintings, through my Post-it notes with my little scrappy, you know, Sharpie written messages. But it is not rocket science. In fact, it's so painfully simple. But like right now as we talk, I'm staring at two things. One says, be brave and courageous. And one says, you know, above all, watch with glittering eyes the whole world around you, because the greatest secrets are always hidden in the most unlikely places. Those who don't believe in magic will never find it. And so I'm literally staring at both those messages as we have this conversation, because it takes a lot of courage for me right now in this season on my own of, you know, telling my story and not thinking that people will judge me because I forget to brush my teeth or I have banana smeared on my suit coat. You know, I'm first a mother, and it's my favorite job on the whole planet. And it means that sometimes I show up with banana smeared on my suit jacket.
Yep. It's the beautiful mess of it all that we get to hold all of those spaces. And I think the fact that you're such a present and engaged and passionate mom makes you even better in the work that you do. I love your mothering. I love to see how you love your kids. It's really powerful. Okay, so this whole idea of your whole story matters is really important to me, because a lot of times, especially for us people of faith, we tend to go like life before faith and life after, and kind of bury the past or sweep it under the rug or pretend that things don't exist, or, you know, be okay with not being okay. And I think you've been really courageous, Tara, in how you've been reclaiming your story and how you have walked into some dark places and said like light needs to come into this space now. And it's terrifying to do that work. I think it requires a ton of courage, but it also is incredibly freeing. So you said like you started walking down this road and it was like chains started kind of being taken off you, you know, like the shackles were removed. You just got to rip off these extra layers and become more of yourself. Like there's that freedom. And what has that process been like for you? Like what has been motivation or the drive for you to stay the course and continue to do the work when it's hard?
That's such a good question. You know what's funny is I was thinking as you were asking, I'm very visual, so I had like image, and most of my life is like train tracks, and I have like, it's like showing up in Italy and there's 3, 4, 5, you know, train tracks, and you know the fast train, the not as fast train. Like I think of life and business leadership like that. So like there are things in my business I have on the super slow train. Like I know it's going to take 5 years to like realize a vision. There are things I have in the fast train where it's like, I got to be done for next week to give that speech. And if I'm not prepared, like I'm going to show up basically naked. So like, I think most of life is like that. And what's interesting is I've had to get really uncomfortable with uncertainty. So most of the last decade, and like I said, I'm 41, almost 42. Most of the last decade for me has been becoming really uncomfortable in uncertainty. So I don't always like it, but I actually have kind of found joy and peace in it. And I feel so different now than I did even like 5 years ago in uncertainty. Like I'm just okay with not knowing any answers. In fact, it's really freeing. Like faith to me is this like mysterious, magical, like wonder-filled, like loving journey. And it's clunky and it's messy and it doesn't always like result in things I want or expect, like the flood this week in my house again, number 5 in a year. But I did, you know, I can laugh at it now because it's sort of, it's joyful when you know that there's this perspective so much beyond, or when you believe there's a perspective so much beyond yourself. You don't pretend to understand it. You don't pretend to like come up with any like rules. Like I'm so not interested in rule-based spirituality, but I am very interested in this idea of like a relational, connected, like kind of wonder-filled journey. And, you know, I'm trying to choose every day, even when it's really hard, to lean into that. But I'm also letting myself, you know, when I feel like hitting something, I'll go throw like I just had a leadership retreat with this like a young president's group I'm part of, and I just started like throwing cornhole bags really hard at the wall. I was like, you know, I'm kind of feeling angry, and you know, so like I'm getting better at, you know, expressing whatever is the feeling of the moment in ways that are healthy and not going to be harmful. And I feel like, you know, Brene Brown does a great job reminding us that this idea of wholehearted learning and living means, you know, you have to learn to rest. You have to learn to play. You have to, you know, be okay with, like my counselor always says, Terry, you love being in the happy, positive, joyful. Like, come on, get into the anger space, get into the sadness space. And like, you know, for me, this last like year and a half has been being brave enough when the sadness comes or when the anger comes to say, okay, like affirm and acknowledge that feeling and find something that will kind of help me work through it in a healthy way. But then it's gone. Like then it passes. And it doesn't own me. It doesn't take over the next 3 weeks. It's like, oh, I just like it just moves through me. And
you host it and then you let it go.
Totally. So, you know, I think the unpredictability of life has become something even more wonderful for me right now. Because otherwise, if I looked at it the other way, it could just be a story of terror and fear and trepidation. And, you know, I've had to face things I never in a million years thought I would have to face alone. And now I feel like I learned how to do that thing that I never knew how to do or wanted to do. And, you know, I feel like it's given me strength, courage, and resilience that I didn't know I had, which I'm also grateful for.
talked a little bit about the integration of your body into your emotional life, your mental life, your spiritual life, because that transforming journey, I think, is essential for us.
That's where it gets like really interesting for me. So, I think we're all like humans at the end of the day who have this opportunity to live like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And what's funny is I love to go into my head and I love to go into like my spirit. And that kind of tends to come naturally to me. Where I get really clunky is like in my body and in my emotion. And some of it's because for years I practiced living outside of those because it was just easier. And that was a way to avoid pain or places of trauma that were too scary to go into. And so I notice right now there are times where my body is telling me something that my mind, my emotions, and my spirit have no idea is true. So sometimes my body is telling me like, hey, world headquarters, we got a problem here. Like it's, either like, oh, by the way, you're so exhausted because you've been doing so much work in the space of mental, emotional, spiritual, that your body is just tired. Like your body's saying, go to bed, just stop, just like done, game over. So sometimes my body is like, it's kind of like the gatekeeper that says, okay, you have to put that down right now. You love to work on it. You want to work on yourself. You're such a little hard worker, but like chill the heck out right now. Yeah. And so on one hand, my body is sometimes just requiring me to obey through fatigue. Other times it's like, hey, you've got this like pain thing, this like pain body or something going on. And for me, I carry it in my back, usually. And my whole life, I've kind of had just like upper back pain. And what's funny is there was a point a couple of years ago where I lost feeling in my left hand and I couldn't hold a glass. I couldn't hold a pencil. And it was sort of like my body was just blocking what I was trying to work through years of practice, really. And so in many ways, I'm having to like learn healthy patterns in all kinds of parts of my world. And some come more naturally. Like it's easier for me to do that mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's been harder in my body. I like to run away from my life in general, but I especially like to physically run. Like it's how I work through anxiety or how I work through fear. And there are times where I'm so exhausted that I both have this desire to work through the anxiety and run, but I'm also so tired. I'm having to just like wrestle with, okay, I guess today is going to be a really slow run and not very long. Like it's just like my body is sort of weird to say this, but like Lord of my life right now. And it's also like learning hunger, like learning, like just like the basic primal stuff. Like I feel like I'm getting a chance to live in the sensory reality of now in a way that I don't know if I ever really have lived in up until this last probably year and a half. And it's kind of been awesome because I'm like, I'm so aware of, a certain flavor in a food or like a certain smell, good or bad, or like, a visceral, like what you can touch, feel. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, oh wow. Like I'm just alive in a different way. And so for all the challenge of it, it's also been like really amazing. Like it's teasing me in. So the courage for every day to keep going is like, I feel like the mystery of my life right now and the magic of the universe is that I'm being kind of teased into like believing there's going to be enough good wonder and joy amidst the challenge, the pain, the sorrow, the grief. Like I've actually had to learn to hold space for both. And I have a dear girlfriend who's like going through a major just like cancer battle and her family. And we talk about this mystery of holding space for both.
Yep. Yeah, you have to. And I think the more that you make space for the pain and the loss and the ambiguity and the uncertainty, you actually have more capacity for the stuff that we think is good. It's all probably good because it teaches us so much. I mean, you've said earlier to me that your body has been like your strongest spiritual teacher in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I fully resonate with that. I have also run from my body for my whole life for a variety of reasons. And I think that women tend to do this even more than men, at the risk of making an overgeneralization. But I think that like our bodies never lie. She is always right. She is wise. She has so much to teach us that actually will weight us and anchor us more into the things that we value, like the spiritual or the emotional or our thinking, in ways that it just like takes on a technicolor, like dynamic nature when we listen to her. So it's just really, I love seeing how you're rooting yourself into integrating that more. Okay, we've got to also talk about scarcity and abundance because this is one of my favorite things to talk about these days. I have been on a crazy journey parallel with you in this process. But what has been some of the greatest learning and transformation that you have had in moving from a scarcity mentality to an abundance mentality?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm just in it and I'm just choosing it. And it is building muscles that aren't natural, but it's also, I was telling someone actually earlier today, like a year ago, it was very conscious. It was very deliberate. It was sort of like, no, I'm not going to do that thing that would be the very kind of scarce reaction or scarce approach. I'm going to do this thing. And it would sort of be fighting myself. And the only person that was aware of me fighting myself was me. But it would take so much bravery and so much like worry or fear or anxiety to just choose the abundant mentality. And right now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I just do it. I have opportunities that present themselves. I know it's either going to cost me money, time, energy, resource. And I also know with total like complete reality that like I have to do X, whatever X is in front of me. And so it's funny. I'm getting a lot of moments right now to practice that like in real life, whether it is a choice of how to spend my time, money, energy, influence, or like whether it's outside in the sort of wonder of just like nature and the reality. Like so much of my spirit comes alive outside. And so it's funny, I was thinking about your question, like I literally am staring, at 100 miles of trails behind my house and like Reddit downtown and the mountains out in front of me. And like, if we just pay attention to what's around us, like it is abundant. Like just, there's no way to tell yourself a different story. There is abundance all around us. And so as I get, if I get fearful in a place of choosing abundance, I actually just kind of go right back to where I feel at home, which is outside. And I notice that everywhere around me outside when I'm running or biking or hiking or skiing with my kids, like I just notice abundance exists independent of any humans. Like abundance is just, it is surrounding us. And so, I'm having to practice now. Like so my strengths, like if you've done Strength Finders, my strengths are like futurist, positive, visionary, like ideator, activator, connectedness, like I am a total visionary. I can't help it. And every part of my DNA and my kind of like tested, data-driven accuracy is that. So like practicing now for me takes a lot of energy because like I live in the future that doesn't exist, that needs to be created. Like that's what I get up to do for my like work, quote unquote. And it's what brings me joy. It's what I'm in flow in. And yet I'm like loving the now. Like I've been like, thank God for like Eckhart Tolle and some amazing, like just guides that I think are really good at framing now and helping us live into now, because I've been practicing now for, a couple of years, and I'm like, oh, now it feels natural to choose now.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel always intuitive, which is it's funny that the nuance of language, but it does feel natural once I just say yes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 I think you said some important things there around you've got to practice the stuff that needs to become just rhythm and natural, or intuitive. Like natural is, I think, probably how we've been created more. Intuitive is like, this makes sense to me, but it might not be natural yet. And that's where your practice is doing the work gives you the muscles that it just becomes a part of your everyday life, where you're doing what you need to do because you've got the muscle memory for it. Goody Goodlow was a guest just episode right before you, talking about how do we build habits and how do we do the things that will get us to the places that we want to be. And practicing abundance over scarcity, that mindset shift it's just revolutionary, because our world loves to promote how much we lack. We are not enough. We're not skinny enough. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough money. We didn't have good enough grades. We didn't come from a good enough family. All of those not enoughs are just plague the way that we think about our lives, which dramatically impact how it is that we engage our life and the work that we do to get us to the places that we want to go or not.
Right.
So that is, yes, standing and cheering for you on that. And now you're just doing it. It's not even conscious anymore. Like that's goals right there, girl.
Well, I mean, most of life is about trying and about practice, right? And so I think a lot about like this word rhythm. I use this word rhythm in every part of my world, but like I'm very intentioned and disciplined about rhythms of my life. So like as crazy on the outside as my life might seem, it's actually painfully simple day to day. Like I get up, I have my gratitude practice. I like take my time by myself to like meditate and reflect and like get in my zone and just like center and strengthen my anchor. And like there's just a lot of simplicity in our home. And that simplicity in our home facilitates kind of the nut jobness in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And truthfully, like I am way more comfortable in motion than being still. And so it's also learning to embrace like kind of how to get in my own zone in motion and how to take rhythms on the road, so to speak. So, what my rhythms look like when I'm in a hotel room versus here. In some ways, it's like in Thailand, they have this t-shirt that says same, but different. It's kind of same, but different, And so I practice those rhythms because they're what holds me together, like the glue of my own humanity together, independent of where I am. And when I feel off center, it's funny, but like it doesn't take long to get back, assuming I just jump into one of those natural rhythms. Like, okay, like jump back into the gratitude practice, jump back into the playlist for this month. Okay, jump back into this podcast, the one you keep, I'm sort of old school in that I have a lot of security blankets in my life. And, some are digital and music based. Some are podcasts and voices that just resonate with my spirit right now. Some are just like journal practices. They're very simple, but for me, and again, I think everybody has their own formula. I think everybody's kind of got to figure out their own formula. And I don't know, it's not my job to give anyone a formula, but I do try to encourage people to figure out their own formula, because if they figure out their own formula, then they can unlock like extra. And when I say extra, I mean extra time, extra money, extra energy, like extra everything, because it really will empower increased capacity if people figure out their formulas.
Yes. That was the question I was going to lead you into was I think it's so important for leaders, if they're going to do their work internally in order to have the best output in their work, you've got to figure out rhythms and anchors that will allow you to be integrated from the inside out, so that there's not like this false self, shadow self that shows up at work but is disconnected from who you truly are. And you're absolutely right that there's really not a formula. It also changes in different like seasons and chapters of life, you know, when you're single versus married versus, having kids or not kids or little kids or older kids or new job, or you've been in the same job for 10 years, like those, taking into account the different chapters of our life allows us to be able to write our story in a proactive way and make it custom to you. You and I are different. We function differently. We have different needs. And being able,
like our families are different.
Right.
Our kids are like your life moments just require something of you every day that you can't predict.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity is like, can you be brave enough to show up and be present? So like for me, sometimes I worship the practice and that's the wrong worship.
Right.
So what I mean is like, I love to practice gratitude. I do it with my kids. Like, hey, what are you grateful for? We do it on the way to school. Like we do it at breakfast. But then it's easy for me to obsess on the practice, not the heart condition. And so, for instance, like if my kids like need extra of me at 6 a.m. in the morning before we're headed to the bus stop, or if just something is going on and I miss my own personal practice, the choice I have to make immediately is like, do I click into I can be grateful no matter what, whether I'm writing something down or not.
Yeah.
And like, can I keep my heart primed for now?
Yeah.
Versus like actually worship the stupid practice, which is not the goal.
Right. Yeah.
And yet those of us who like to like create rules and systems, and I was trained as an engineer, I like frameworks, I like systems. and that's not the goal. The goal is what they enable or what they empower.
Yep.
And so anyway, I just, I do believe in the practice, but beyond that, I believe in this idea of like, are you aware enough of the condition? Am I personally right now, right here, of the condition of my heart, of like my head, like, how do I check in? I do with a group. I have a group of kind of peers, and we check in, and we start it with like an emotional check-in. It's like, okay, I yesterday was like, my head is cluttered. Like I'm mentally cluttered, and like there's times where you feel like super alive, and there's times where you feel like, but you have to actually kind of check in with yourself throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout, the season. And if you don't, I don't think you can actually like, and it's funny because all my analogies are maritime right now because I'm working in the travel industry, but I really think you can't like change the course of your ship, like really steer differently. And it's funny, I was just in Amsterdam we have like the world's leading maritime industry training facility on the planet. It's amazing, but I got to like steer a ship, which was really cool. And what I noticed was like steering a ship, you actually have to like turn the direction and then come back to center to allow the ship to like turn, but not to like turn way too far. And it was such a fascinating parallel to me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like basically what my life is teaching me right now. Right. And then I got to go like physically do it. And it was pretty cool to like be in a simulator that it was just like, okay, God, I get the message. Like you're teaching me in every part of my life. And now I'm literally doing this.
That's so valuable too, because we are not robots and we are not machines. So there are going to be days or weeks or, chunks of time where we get off course and where we're uncluttered or unfocused or overwhelmed or, not practicing what it is that we need to. And the very nature of those rules and anchors, or those rhythms and anchors, is that we can course correct. We can just jump back in and go, okay, it's a new day and it's a fresh start. And yesterday doesn't have to dictate my presence and my practices today. So let's get about the new stuff, the new habit, and get back into the stream of what it is that we know is going to get us to the place we want to go. So that's really, really cool. And pretty rad that you got to steer a ship. That's rad.
I know, it was pretty cool. Yeah, we have these amazing simulators, and it was really fun. And you know, I mean, I think we can choose fun if we're in the right place, like kind of, you know, mindset and spiritually. Like, life can feel like a whole lot of work, because my life is a lot of work. Like, it's not a walk in the park.
Right.
But it also feels really fun when I choose to make it like a better version of work than it might naturally present itself as. And when I choose to be aware of like what's going on in my body and my spirit right now, like, do I just need a break? Like I think sometimes we need to be brave enough to just say, I'm not going to look at this again for 24 hours, whatever this is, whether it's the white paper you got to do, the speech you got to write, the presentation you got to crank out, you know, I mean, it's just like sometimes our minds and our bodies are saying, stop, just stop. You're not going to make the progress right now.
Yeah, totally.
Just walk away, go eat ice cream, do a little dance with your kids, like paint something. My house was flooding last week. So naturally I pulled out a bunch of tiles and my kids and I started painting.
You're insane.
Like, what are you doing? I know. I was like, we're going to paint because I just need to paint right now.
Yeah, I love it. All right, we got to wrap this baby up. I mean, I love our conversation. I think you are just one of the beautiful guides of showing us what it looks like to do the work. And it's not just the stuff to make us better leaders on the outside, you know, adding the skills or taking another class or adding a certification, but actually the work that you do internally gets to overflow. And then it's a really cool natural output. So I am wrapping up every one of these episodes with 3 questions that help to create a map of sorts for folks of how they can define and design and do life to get where it is that they want to go, to have different results in their life. And so I've got just 3 questions I'm going to ask you in those 3 areas. And I want you to give me like your 60 seconds or less gut response in each area. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
All right. So in kind of defining where you're at right now, the question is, how do you give yourself a reality check?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question. In terms of reality check, I think for me, my biggest mirror is my kids. So I think it's my kids and the people closest to me. You know, the reality is I run around and work with and know a lot of people, but there's a small handful of people that I keep extremely close to my heart. And so being brave enough to say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you notice in me? What do you see happening? What are the patterns that either are or aren't happening right now? And, you know, what do you think that means for me? And the other thing is just the spirit of my kids. I notice that my kids are so brave and so resilient, and they are strong and courageous, and they're prepared for often much more than I am. But if their spirits are kind of shaky or off, I immediately go internal for myself and say, what's going on with me? Like what are they mirroring or manifesting that maybe I haven't yet been willing to deal with? So I would say, you know, that my kids and the people closest to me probably, and then sleep. Sleep for me is a pretty simple indication. Like, do I have this whole idea of peace that surpasses understanding or not? Like, can I go to bed at night? And if not, what is it like digging into what is it that's keeping me up at night?
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So as you think about designing the plan, you know, designing how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be, what's a practice that you do intentionally so that you're proactive in your life?
Well, like I said, I kind of have this like love affair with Post-it notes. But if you were sitting with me in my home office right now, you would notice I have about 700 Post-it notes of different colors, different organizational patterns all over the wall on my left. I also have them on 3 walls in my office. And like, so I have kind of different areas of my house that I create, a little bit like vision or dream boards, but you know, very different themes and very different purposes. Everything from like, okay, so obviously I'm still driving and catalyzing Create Common Good to the vision and the future that we have always believed is possible. And so one of my boards is a Create Common Good board, and it's kind of got like, the channels of where we need to go and what we need. So it's sort of a fill in the blank, like vision board. One of my boards is my day job board, and it's like, it's the busiest one, and it's got all kinds of information right now around fuel and clean energy. It's got all kinds of information around efficient waste management and food production systems. It's got all kinds of, I know it's totally awesome. Everybody's like, yeah, let me talk about that on Friday night. But it's everything we're doing around this idea of healthier oceans and healthier communities. So it's a lot of the nerdy like stuff that I need to dig into, or a partner or a university that I got to go dig further around. So I think I try to remind myself. So like, I guess to answer your question more quickly, it's this idea of what am I going to do to remind myself to dig more or dig deeper around the things that keep coming back to my spirit. So I have a lot of dreams, and I have them like, they stick with me. They won't go away. And they're a lot like that book. My favorite book is What Would You Do with an Idea? And I notice when I get an idea, I do wrestle with it over time. And so I'm wrestling with several new ideas right now. And I've been wrestling with them, some of them for 3 years, some of them for 18 months, some of them for 5 months. And what's fun is as I wrestle further with them and just give myself space to like kind of spitball it with Post-its and different colors, then all of a sudden I start to get more clarity. So I'm big on these kind of 3 C's right now: clarity, courage, and conviction. And I start to get more clarity, which then gives me the courage I need to whatever, the conviction might be, to do or to start or to invest or to create. Because at the end of the day, I think every human was like made to create something. And it might be song, it might be business, it might be art, it might be, there's a zillion ways you can express that creative nature. But I like to have so much fun. It's just I'm not always disciplined at just creating space for just me to be with me to do that.
Sounds like you need to become an affiliate for like Post-it, because you are you're making the millions right now. That's what I heard right now.
Well, I told someone that my dream job is to like if I get to live another life, it'll be as like a Post-it spokesmodel. Like maybe they'll like go searching for, a supermodel of Post-its, and I will happily, with my apron on and my like nerdy little, Sharpies, I would sign myself up, man, because it is really like, I don't know how I do my life. It sounds really stupid to say this out loud. Like now that I say I'm going to laugh at myself, but I do not know how I would do my life without Post-its.
That sounds like the soundbite for this episode. I love it. And now that you know that you're beautiful, you will be the spokesmodel, and you've just said it. So all of these things that you're dreaming about, I won't be surprised if this is what happens. So you heard it here on the Global Fringe Season 2. Oh my gosh. Okay, last one. We got to make this quick because we got to wrap up. So we've been talking this whole episode about doing the work. But what's a 1-degree trajectory shift that you have made over time that's really made a difference for you?
Ooh, 1-degree trajectory shift. I think one of the things I've done that's made a big difference is created margin in my calendar. So I used to literally go from the meeting and I mean, there are days still that feel like this to some extent, but I used to go from the 3 to 3:30 meeting, the 3:30 to 4, the 4 to 4:30, the 4:30 to 5:30, like just like stupid insanity. And then I would literally run in the house at 6:00 so fast. I had to pee so bad because I hadn't peed all day. And I'd be like, what am I doing? So I've actually gotten better at blocking out, and this is not rocket science. And most smart people that are way more advanced than I am said, yeah, I did that a long time ago. But I've gotten a lot better at blocking time to just work on what I call the real work, which is like my most strategic headspace. And it's where I've got Post-its and I'm working on the wall and I'm reorganizing kind of how I'm thinking or talking about some of what we do, or what we need to go learn more about, or a big new partnership or a new business model possibility. That's where I tend to get the good stuff. The good fruit comes out of there.
Yeah.
But it means saying no. So I've gotten better at saying no to stuff, I guess. Getting there little by little.
Well, I also heard Post-its again. So the real work is the more meaningful thing that you said. And I mean, Tara, your body of work is impressive for sure. But the more substantive and rooted thing for me is the work that you've done internally. And you've done the real work in your day jobs, but also in your soul. And so thank you so much for your vulnerability, for your courage. Thank you for sharing some of your story with us. I just respect the hell out of you and love you dearly. And so thank you so much for taking all the time, plus all of the tech issues that we had in the beginning, to say yes to this conversation. So how can people find you or follow the work that you're doing online?
Well, that's a great question, because I think I was telling you I mostly went offline for the last several months to just get my anchor back and solid. But I'm most places, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. If I get back on Instagram, if I get back on Facebook, I'm Tara V as in kind of violin Russell. So it's usually the same handle at all those places.
All right.
And that's usually the best way to find me.
That's great. We will link it to the show notes, and folks can find you and follow the stuff that you're doing. And thank you. You're fantastic. And thanks for showing us how to do the work. You are invaluable.
It is totally my joy, and what an honor to be with you. And I'm just hoping next time I get to see you in person.
I know. With a glass of wine, please. All right. Thanks, hon.
Hey friends, do you love podcasts like the one you just listened to? Have you ever dreamed about having your own? Well, my name is Michael and I work for TruthWork Media. We believe that everyone has a story and every story deserves a podcast. Let us help you get started. Look us up at www.truthworkmedia.com, fill out our questionnaire, and I'll schedule a time to talk. It's really that easy. TruthWork Media. Everyone has a story. Yours needs a podcast.